Hi, I'm Todd, and in this edition of the Overdrive Radio Podcast, we're going to hear from Executive Vice President of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, Todd Spencer, and we're talking a little bit about the new Knockout Bad Regs campaign that the association started up or announced last week at the Mid-America Trucking Show. When the press release came through on Thursday morning last week, just announcing the campaign, kind of giving a little bit of the details, couldn't help but notice that it sort of coincided directly with the big show out in front of the White House with ATA's America's Road Team drivers. And I asked Todd Spencer about that a little bit, if there was any connection there, and he chuckled a bit and said, no, of course, it was timed for the beginning of the Mid-America Trucking Show. And he went on to, deliver a message that I think though it may have gotten a little bit overshadowed in the news last week of the drivers at the White House. I think it is a little more forceful, and I suspect for most Overdrive readers, could bit more meaningful. Here he is.
We have to start creating greater and greater awareness because, again, we're in this situation where we have more regulations now than we've ever had. We've had more enforcement of regulations than we've ever had. We have more compliance with regulations now than we've ever had, and safety isn't improving, it's going the other way. Crashes are increasing. The agency doesn't have a clue. Doing more, doubling down on the idiocy that we've been doing is not only not going to improve safety, it's going to do just the opposite. We think it's time to start jettisoning some of the junk that clearly has no connection with safety. That's what this is about. And encouraging truckers to actually become more involved. We tell them to go to our Fighting for Truckers website, knock out bad regs. Got to be active, got to communicate with lawmakers. So we have an administration now that has said cutting regulation is a priority. And we want to tell them what we want to provide the ammunition, the information for the administration, what they need to focus on. And it's absurd. The people that we represent are career drivers that measure their miles by the millions. Do you think they're not concerned with highway safety? Right. They're more concerned than anybody about their safety, about the safety of others, all the vehicles around them, cars and trucks.
Joining the conversation with myself and Mr. Spencer was OOIDA board member Monte Wiederhold, who's based in Ohio, runs a small fleet of 8 trucks, and he had elaborated on that a little bit on that final point that Todd Spencer was making.
And think about it this way, Todd. If you have a guy that owns one truck or a trailer, and he gets in a wreck, whether it's his fault or not, but gets in a wreck and that truck is out of commission, even though he's got insurance to fix it, he's either going to have downtime where he's not going to have any income coming in. Whereas a guy that's driving a company truck, he has an accident, he just, hey, come back to the shop and get into this other one and take off. I mean, I'm not saying that's, depending on what happened, he could be fired maybe or reprimanded or whatever, but I'm just saying the difference is because we have so much invested there. I mean, it's not a job to us, it's a lifestyle to us. It's way more than that, so.
And as you are going out and talking to lawmakers, Spencer did give a couple of pointers here to keep in mind, going by his own and others' experiences that he's seen. Wiederhold comes in after Spencer speaks. You'll hear the voice change, and what he's referring to is a meeting in which he took part. Owner-operator Scott Reed and consultant Richard Wilson, whom I wrote about, were also there. It's the same meeting that was conducted with Ohio Rep Jim Jordan several weeks back now, and that's what he's referring to when he's talking about the meeting.
Sure. If you're going to communicate with lawmakers, you want to make your points without giving them a club to beat you with.
Yeah, sure.
And if you're not smart enough to do that, you're better off not meeting with a lawmaker or anybody else.
Sure.
And it's a matter of being in those situations and having that happen to you is a pretty good learning tool. So when there are issues on the table,
sure,
focus on those issues.
Yeah.
If you're going to throw a lot of other stuff in there, if you want to write a letter, you want to educate a lawmaker, you want to write a letter, You put 20 things in your letter. That's the quickest way in the world to get that letter set aside.
Sure.
You put one thing in there, maybe two.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you have something to talk about, something to work with.
And that was something that happened with the meeting was, like I said, there were so many people. It started out really good, but then it got into the weeds about drug testing and all like that and everything.
Yeah.
And so before, and I'm sitting next to Jim, and I said, hey, look, I had the paper that we had put out about the 2 regulations that the Freedom Caucus had put out. And I said, here, we got these 2 regulations, speed limiters and the ELDs. Right? That's the only thing that's being talked about. Does this other stuff need to be looked at? Certainly.
Right.
But it's not going to be discussed right now. So, I mean, to talk about it, it's a good thing, but it's going to be a waste of time in the end. And Jim needs to know the 2 things we want him to focus on.
Right.
So it wound up as a good meeting still, but, I mean, it was, you know, a little bit out in the weeds there.
So where is the association now on the ELD mandate? I asked that to Spencer, and here's what he had to say.
Well, you know, we've appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Having said that, Supreme Court only accepts a fraction of the cases that get offered to them. We think if they were to look at this issue, they would address some of the issues that should have been addressed previously. One, the privacy issues. One, why is it this regulation actually requires surveillance of drivers for hours of service? Because it doesn't need to do that. Hours are hours no matter where you are.
Right.
So
the other thing too is that clarity of the courts. In 2011, we had a 3-judge panel threw it out on the very first tenet of the argument. So then you have 3 more judges from the same court rule, and I guess that all 3 of them rule against us. It was a 2-1, it was 3-0 against us. So you're like, okay, the court rules one way one time, the rule the next way the next time.
Different rule.
Yeah.
Right.
We were actually hoping to
but the issues didn't change.
Right. The issue was the same.
And you know, when it's the same court, except with appellate courts, there may be a dozen different judges, maybe more. They just get assigned, and oftentimes, if a case has been held by a court, been before a court before, they bring the same judges back simply because they have familiarity.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't there.
They didn't. Okay, huh?
It was just totally that we're totally unfamiliar with the issues.
Right.
But then we appealed to have all the judges. En banc, they call it, or whatever.
Yep.
And they denied that appeal. So then
The next step is to go all the way.
Supreme Court, or try to get something done through the legislative, which is way
Do you hear anything that is encouraging about when you noticed in the hearings? I can't remember the name of the case, but in the Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Gorsuch this week, they're talking a lot about the GPS. I think it's the GPS is a GPS-related case. What I'm struggling to remember there is the Jones case, which was decided in 1983 and essentially involved the use of a GPS device on a car for law enforcement purposes without a judicial warrant, which was decided in favor of the defendant in the case. The use of the device was deemed an unreasonable search.
It makes you wonder again, I think if this were to come before the Supreme Court, I think they would take an interest in it.
Sure.
Because it addresses issues that have never been dealt with before.
Right.
Kind of the rest of the story there is that FMCSA is really providing no direction or guidance or anything like that in regard to what an ELD, what a compliant device would be.
Right.
Those that are on their website.
Didn't they say under the FAST Act provisions that we are actually not allowed to give that guidance out? Wasn't that what one of them told you, Todd?
Well, because of provisions of the law, and then of course provisions of things may change with the new administration too. Okay. But yeah, what you're talking about is a specific provision of the FAST Act that covers what kind of guidelines they can put together. Okay. And right now, one of the things they're saying is that there may be legally prohibited from doing it, but see, I don't think they're ready to anyway. And the other side of that is that we don't think that states are anywhere close to ready to actually start enforcing ELD requirements if everybody had them.
You know, one of the other things about the ELD thing is, Todd, when I sat in on that meeting up there at Jordan's office, Rotor Cartage, from Lima, Ohio, they're, I don't know, probably 100, 150 trucks. But the guy was talking about, the safety manager was talking about that their CSA scores have really improved since they went to the ELDs. And he said, you know, we had a driver in Illinois the other day, was pulled into the scale for a check. And so the guy says, I need to see your logbook. And the guy goes, oh, what? And he said, this driver happened to be one of our guys that's not really a fan of the ELD. He said, you know, I got this piece of crap up here in the windshield. And he goes, oh, you're on ELDs? Oh, okay, you're good.
Yeah.
He didn't even check it.
Right.
So it's like Todd was saying, it gives you the illusion of compliance. And this guy was talking, oh, man, our scores have just done really great.
Because they're not getting checked.
Because they're not getting checked. I mean, they verify that they have the recorder.
Sure.
But they don't actually go in and look at it and see. I mean, maybe the guy is, maybe he's not. So, I mean, you know, and so a lot of these companies, they're putting the stickers on the truck. They're getting passed through the scales, and you're somebody like me, maybe you're an owner-operator and running the paper log. I don't have the sticker. Well, let's pull this guy around and see if his paper log is right. So, you know.
It creates this sort of bias in selection. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a smoke and mirrors thing where it makes people think, oh, you know, there's. And the FMCS go, oh man, look, the scores are going way down. You know, your CSA score, the lower it is, the better.
Looks good,
and right? It looks great, so we know they're working, right?
Certainly an often reported situation there, of course. And after that, talk moved on to the subject of split sleeper berth in the pilot program that I wrote about last week. Coming up to, allow an exemption to a subset of drivers to split more liberally than what is allowed now with the 8 and 2. This would take a look at 3 and 7, 4 and 6, 5 and 5, and look at those drivers over time to determine safety outcomes from doing that, and doing it in a variety of ways. You can find that story at overdriveonline.com by searching "fixing the 14-hour rule," as it were. Becoming a mantra lately, isn't it? But anyway, I asked Todd and Monte whether they thought they thought that held any promise at all in the future for the hours of service.
But I mean, yeah, we think there's real possibility there.
Right.
I mean, and it's really common sense.
Well,
Yeah.
and here's the thing, Todd, under the old 10 and 8, that's the way we all done it.
I know.
You know, as long as you didn't have over 15 hours and 24, if you want to take a 2-hour break, fine and dandy, take the 2-hour break. I mean, and you know, I mean, right.
You do it to avoid traffic.
Right. Or maybe like you use the example of bad weather.
Absolutely.
You know, if a guy can outrun a storm, why would you want to be in a snowstorm when maybe you could outrun it, even though maybe you...
Well, I've been in that situation.
Oh, sure. It's, like I said, it's common sense, and when you want your drivers to stay out of that if they could,
Right.
you know. So
Sometimes you drive a little faster to try to stay ahead.
exactly.
I mean, anybody that knows anything about driving understands, and those that don't, they don't.
Would, if this was the law of the land, again, sort of, you kept the 14-hour rule, but you could extend it out with these, split periods, would the ELDs be more palatable or not?
You mean if there was changes in the hours of service?
Would be palatable to me because I'd be quick.
Well, there's still the cost involved.
I mean, you're talking about
I'm just,
you're talking about the hours of service regulations.
Yeah.
Those regulations are an issue.
Yeah.
But ELDs are a productivity advice for carriers. They want to be able to push drivers to get every available possible minute. That's why they want them.
Okay.
I mean, they acknowledge that straight out after this stuff came out. It's a productivity device, but until it can tell whether or not somebody not fatigued, then it's not going to be a safety device. So it's a device that's counter to that. So, but again, why would a one-truck operator want to pay the continuous monthly fees, buy the equipment, and the equipment will have to be upgraded? The equipment will malfunction. Why would you put that kind of cost on if it doesn't have a benefit to you? People want to use them, that's fine.
Yeah.
Should there be a mandate? Hell no.
See, I mean, it's like at that meeting, you know, and I hadn't even thought about this, but some of the companies, like that Rotor Car is already on it, they said, you know, it's actually said, even though we had the expense of buying ELD, we saved money on the fuel tax reporting because I think they were able to maybe get rid of one of their staff, or, you know, because it's, you know, pushing a button and it's all downloaded and it's all, you know, put in there and formatted out and boom, you know, it's done. So like I say, for, you know, these big fleets and stuff, I can see if they want to do it from the record-keeping standpoint, you know. But I mean, to force, you know, individual owner-operators of small fleets like myself, like we've got 8 trucks, to have to do it, I mean, we're working well without it. I don't want it. I mean, like I said, yeah, if they improve the hours served, it would make it better, but I mean, do I want it still? No.
Finally, the talk turned into the area of training, and particularly the entry-level driver training rule, which has been delayed a bit and has been through several iterations in recent years. And you know, OOIDA has been pushing for that for decades at this point. But Todd had a little bit of a thought about the measurement of safety and experience of the driver, something that he says you know, we don't really track very much.
It's inexcusable that we don't measure experience of the driver that have crashes.
Sure.
There are so many things that, again, if you focus on who crashes, you're going to gain some insight as to who does and who doesn't.
Sure.
To focus on training.
If I could just expound a little bit on that. But last year we were down here for a listening session, and the FMCSA, Bill Quaid was one of the guys was down. And so I was up there talking, and I said, you know, because at the time they wanted to give technology credits to the carriers. They load the truck with technology, give them credits against their safety score. And so I brought up a couple of things to where, and both of them were airline analogies. But if you recall the crash out in Sioux Falls, Iowa there several years ago, where it was a DC-10 and the center engine over the top, it exploded and it cut all the hydraulics out of the plane. Now the pilot was matter of fact, he had to retire not long after this, but he was a well-seasoned pilot. He had, I mean, that plane was the latest and greatest at the time. But you know, he flew the plane because the only way you could fly the plane was by varying the speed of the engine. That was from up here. That wasn't from a book. It wasn't technology.
Nothing in the books about it.
And you remember Sully, when the bird strike hit, he knew by the way the plane was. He instinctively knew. Yet when, you know, in the movie they show that the computer saying, well, you could have made it back to Teterboro, or you could have made it back. He said, no, we're going to be in the Hudson. Well, yeah, but why? I mean, you could have made it back. The computer said you could have made it back. Well, when they figured in the time of him trying to restart the engines and all like that, he couldn't make it back. And he put it, and I mean, man, that's a remarkable thing when you think about that. Nobody was killed in that.
Well, yeah, that's experience.
Flying with the seat, that's the way you do it. Drive a truck the same way.
What were you going to say, Todd?
I was going to say, pilots spend a lot of time, a lot of training on what to do when things go bad.
Right.
None of that stuff exists for truckers. Well, I mean, they barely get training on going down the road.
Yeah.
You have to learn to react
instinctively. Yeah. The same companies that think ELDs are great have fought against that entry-level driver training standard that we tried to get for over 30 years. The same people that think ELDs are safe have fought against that. And I mean, you know, when you come down to it, I mean, it's just like when you first learned how to drive, your mom and dad turned you loose, you know, you didn't really know a whole lot what was going on, but as time, you know, and things happen, experience, you know, it means a whole lot.